Camera 1, camera 2. Hey y'all, I want to share some of the different types of steel, different shapes, chemical composition, anywhere from bar stock, round stock, square stock, and just kind of junk you find. And talk a little bit about the difference between them and why or why not you would use that. So let's begin. Most of the steel that you're going to find comes in bar stock. If you're new to this, you probably tried to make knives out of leaf springs and all kind of other junk steel, which I don't care what anybody says, leaf springs aren't always 5160. You don't really know what they are, and you don't know what's happening on the inside or if they're cracked or anything. So you can use that. I don't recommend it. Good, high quality steel is not very expensive. And the easiest way to begin and learn and kind of change the curve for yourself, instead of taking a long time and struggling, get a good piece of steel. Bar like this, 80 CRV2, that's like $40. It's available, you can get this stuff. And it has vanadium in it, and that's why it makes it so nice. Grain refinement, toughness, wear resistance. It doesn't have enough carbon in it to activate the vanadium carbides. It's just below what it needs to have that, but it's still one of my favorite steels, and it makes a perfect knife. It's good for hunters, kitchen knives, choppers, even swords, even Damascus. You can use this in Damascus. So this is the one I'm going to talk about first. It's kind of funny. I feel like I should be sponsored by whoever makes it. I don't know. So this is what I wanted to just showcase first. You can get this in several thicknesses, almost any width that you want. You can even buy a whole sheet of it if you do. But when you're beginning, this is a great steel. It forges very well. There are other steels that I have been on some of the forums and Facebook groups. I tend to leave them rapidly because I'm not interested in having a discussion with an idealistic viewpoint from someone who's never used this stuff. And I don't argue with people about this because I know, so I don't need to argue. I'm always learning more, but I do know what I'm talking about, and I'm sharing it with you because it's important to me. I'm not trying to just talk and hear myself talk. I want to share good information that makes it easier for you to go out there and forge blades and make knives. Number one reason I'm doing that. Some of the shapes that steel comes in, okay? Flat bar, this is rectangular stock. This was cut from a big plate. This is round bar. This is a smaller round bar. This is very thin pieces of steel. This is 15 and 20 and 1084. This type of material will be used in making Damascus. This is a piece of Damascus. This is steel that technically you could say, we made ourselves. Tiger Lily actually forged welded all this together and started making a knife out of it. But the thing is, don't make life harder on yourself. I did a video on making a sword and I used the mystery material. Now, the truth is I don't know what all of these springs are, but the ones that I have collected are all either 1060 or 1084. And the only way I can really find out that they're 1084 is to cut a chunk off, send it out to the lab, have it tested, and then I'll get an analysis and it tells me the chemistry of this stuff. So this stuff came back at 0.86% to 0.82%. Pretty clean, not much of anything else, some manganese. That makes it 1084. Bam, that's how I know that. The other thing is, it's really crusty. Usually the crustier they are with no serial numbers, high likelihood of that. So I don't really need to hear all these Chinese designations of numbers that people are giving me. A lot of this stuff is made overseas now and sent here. It's not really made in America anymore. But the old spring stock, clip, whatever it is, are usually in piles meant for the scrapyard or wherever, but it does make a good knife. But I'm not saying use it, I'm just saying it is the variety of metal we will call scrap or unknown or just mystery steel. And you can waste a lot of time just playing with this and figuring it out and then making a knife and finding out that, you know what, that doesn't make a great knife. So it takes a lot of money and a lot of research that goes into figuring out what that is. So guess what? This free stuff is way more expensive and time consuming than this bar of 80 CRV2, which you can just go buy and it's just perfect. So some of the other steels that you may find, I'll use the round bar because this is common. Probably the most easily gotten round bar is going to be drill rod or W1. A lot of supply companies carry that. And that's a really clean steel. It makes good knives and you can use it, but you have to be able to break down round stock. I like it for integrals. Now this is not W1. I have W2. What's the difference? W2 is high carbon vanadium alloy. So it has 0.25 vanadium. This one has 0.25 vanadium and it has 0.93% carbon, which makes it W2. It's pretty clean. This is what we call the virgin stock. This wasn't made out of scrap metal. This was like a virgin smelt. That's why it's very different than the modern version of W2 that you can buy. I don't know where you can buy this. When I find it, I buy everything that they got because I really enjoy using this steel. This is great steel and I don't want to run out of it. So if somebody has 1,000 pounds, I'll buy 1,000 pounds. Now I haven't seen that in years and years and years. So good luck. It's just going to be a kind of a luck thing if you believe in luck, and I kind of don't. So maybe you find it, maybe don't. Now, if you can't find that, I'm going to show you a really cool one you can find. This is Hitachi 1085. And this is made in Japan by Hitachi. And Toyota uses it in some of their trucks and different steering linkages and maybe some spring parts. But these are drops that a friend of mine has been getting. You can purchase it through Pop's Knife Supply, and this makes a great knife. And I found the same. A great hunting knife, a great kitchen knife, really good for integrals. Very easy to move. It forges nice. I mean, I could forge a point on this stuff in one heat by hand. So this is a great steel to get if you're into making integrals or you just want a bigger dimension. So for me, one of the things that I like is I like bigger pieces of steel. So often I'm making Damascus, and the Damascus is actually starting out with thinner pieces, 15 and 20, 1095, 80 CRV2 now. I'm using a lot of this for it. It gets really dark, it's nice. And I like to use steels that will make a knife by themselves when I'm making Damascus. So I don't use like 01 and mild steel. That's something that makers were using way back in the day, and that's fine, but maybe they just, some people didn't know any better. Some people did. My point is, don't make these things difficult on yourself. Again, I've talked to a lot of makers. I've gone through a lot of discussions, and I've taught a lot of seminars to new makers, and everybody has, well, what about this? Why couldn't I use this? The steels that you find will be more expensive time-wise to use, and they may end up costing you more, because when you make something out of steel that you don't know what it is, it may or may not make a blade. So just remember that when you're trying to be on the cheap, because it actually, your time is your most valuable commodity, because you can never replace it. But you could probably always make a couple more bucks and buy some more steel. So example, here it is, I'm showing it to you now. Take that and then bam, you make Damascus. Cool thing with the Damascus is it really becomes like your thumbprint. And since we're talking about that, there is no such equation to calculate random, and then it wouldn't be random, right? We use this word all the time, commonly called random pattern Damascus. That's taking layers, stacking them up. Basically, you're making a linear pattern. They'll end up kind of with a wood grain. And it's really interesting because two people can take the stack of steel, the same type of steel, forge weld them together, side by side, same equipment. Each piece of steel will come out differently. Has to do with how you're holding it, how you're turning it, and how you're working on a hammer. It's basically like your thumbprint. And there's very defined pattern. Everybody has their own thumbprint. Everybody has their unique features, and the same goes for the Damascus that you make. Has unique features. You're taking known steel, forge welding it together to make W patterns or mosaic patterns. On to the next thing. The composition of steels. I use the ADCRV2 because it is the best modern steel that forges well and responds well to forging that I have been able to find, and it is consistent. Now, when you find a steel like 1095 or 1075, a lot of people like those, and there's nothing wrong with them. However, you don't know where that comes from. I don't know where it comes from. It could be made in a factory in Russia or in China or maybe somewhere in America, but the range is variable. It doesn't require accuracy. It can be pretty far off in its chemistry, so the carbon content could have a very wide band of range in there. Certain steels have a lot of trash in them too, like 1095. It's kind of a dirty steel as compared to W1, which is a very clean steel, almost the same exact steel. I don't use them either because I have this and I can get this. Now, if I want to make an integral out of it, I don't have a thick enough piece. I just weld them all together, no flux, comes out looking like one piece of steel. There's no lines, don't see where it went. So anytime you don't have enough steel, you can always stick more together. If you can't buy a round bar, you can make round bar. It doesn't need to be round, it could be square. This is also W2, and no, I'm not selling it, and I don't know where you buy it again. The qualities of steel, when you have vanadium, and again, vanadium is something that goes into steel to give it its grain refinement, wear resistance, and toughness. And that really makes the difference in this stuff. So there's another steel out there, I'm gonna tell you about it. It's called 5160. Great steel, I don't use it anymore either. But when this stuff first started showing up on the market, someone was saying it was like 5160, but I don't know, there's nothing really like 5160 about it. Totally different, responds differently, forges differently, cuts, holds an edge differently. I like steels that I can have a high hardness. So this is one of them. I can leave it 60, 61 Rockwell on a Hunter, kitchen knife, even higher maybe. Make the edge really thin and fine, and it's durable. Those are important qualities to have in a blade. I could probably keep on going on and on and on about this stuff, but these are high carbon steels. I didn't talk about stainless here. Just talking about high carbon steels and their ability to be forged and made into knives specifically. So I hope this is helpful to you. Leave a comment or a question. I'll be happy to answer some of the questions. I try to go through and answer as many of the questions as I can. I don't know everything there is to know about the steel. I'm learning something new every day, but I do know that buying steel like this is cheaper than using steel like that, especially if you don't have the equipment. I have a power hammer and press, so it makes it pretty fast. And I also have students who've come here and taken my class, and they work for companies that can analyze it, so it's easier for me to send the piece off and have it analyzed. But is it worth it? Is it worth the time? Is it worth the effort? Want to have good steel in around? Well, that's to be determined yet, I guess. So, all right. I hope you enjoyed this little snippet tip. Just some concepts here to help you be a better bladesmith. This is the way. Hit that subscribe button. Give us a like. Leave an intelligent, logical comment. Okay? Have a great day.